In this part of the tutorial, we're going to take a look at how we can tag time. So if we want to tag time, we must first select it. And the easiest way to do this in ManicTime is by dragging on the timelines. But before we do this, there is one more thing I would like to show you. If you move your mouse over the timelines, a hint will be displayed showing you information about the underlying section. So if I move my mouse over the activity timeline, a hint will tell me that this active section is 46 minutes long. It started at 9 AM and ended at 9:46 AM. And notice how the mouse snaps to the border between red and green. It always snaps to the changes in color. But what's interesting is that it snaps differently depending on which timeline your mouse is over. So if I start moving my mouse to the right, notice that it moves smoothly. It doesn't snap to anything. But if I move my mouse over to the applications timeline, it will snap to the changes in title. Now we're going to use what we've learned and tag some time already. Now since I know myself, I probably wasted some time in the morning catching up on RSS feeds. So if I look at the first green section of the day, I see that it is almost a perfect match to the orange section on the applications timeline. And that means that for most of the time I was using Firefox, which means I was more or less surfing the web. So I'm going to select the whole first green section. And I do this by moving at the start of the section, holding down my mouse button and dragging till the end of the section. Great! I've selected some time. Now how do I tag it? I click on the Add Tag button and type in browsing. And I click OK. OK, I've created my first tag. And you can see it on the tags timeline. If I move my mouse over it, the hint is displayed showing me information about the length of the section and the tags I used. Now I'm going to tag some more time. I know I had a meeting at around 10 and I was not at the computer. I was active for a few minutes in between, which means I've probably checked out something real quick during the meeting, but I'm going to tag all this away time as meeting. And this time I'm going to start dragging at the end of the browsing tag to the first bigger active section. So I move to the end of the browsing tag and I hold down my mouse button. I'm dragging and now I am going to move to the activity timeline and I drag to the first bigger active section. And you see how the mouse snaps in place? I release my mouse button and I click Add Tag. And I'm going to tag this as Client Meeting Project 1. And I click OK. Now I added the second tag, but I still have some way to go. After the meeting, I usually write a report about the meeting. So again, I start dragging at the end of the last tag. I move down and I drag to this time. And I'm going to tag this as Client Meeting Report Project 1. And I'm going to click OK. Now I know I had something to eat afterwards. So the next away time is my lunch. And I'm going to select this a bit differently. You can always select sections of the same color by double clicking them. So if I want to select the time which I used for lunch, I can just double click the away time. This is selected and I'm going to tag this as lunch. And I click OK. OK, now let's see what else I've been doing. I have been using a lot of Photoshop and I remember now that I've been designing a web page for a client. So again, I'm going to start dragging at the end of the last tag and I'm going to move down to the applications timeline and end dragging when I stopped using Photoshop. And I'm going to tag this as Client Project 2 Design. Now the order of the tags is not important. I could easily write Design Project 2 Client. It would mean the same, because tags are separated by comma and the order is not important. And I'm going to click OK. Okay, let's continue. We're almost done now. Judging by the orange color in the applications timeline, it seems like I've been browsing for a bit. So we will tag this as browsing. But since I already created a tag for browsing, why not just copy that one? So I go to the browsing tag, I right click and I click copy. I go back to the applications timeline and double click the orange color, which means the time I used for browsing. I right click and I click paste. And since I've been working on a design for project 2 from now on until I went home, we will again copy the tag for design, select the time from the last tag to the last activity and click paste. And that's how easy it is to accurately tag time, and it takes just a few minutes. I'm almost done and I have just one more thing I would like to tag. I usually go for a run in the morning and I would like to tag that as well, so I can later see how much time I spent running. Now I'm going to use the zoom to set the visible time from 6 till 10 in the morning. I go for a run at around 7 and I run for 1 hour. But how do I tag that? Turns out there's one more timeline which I haven't mentioned until now, and it is the time timeline, just above the text timeline. Now if you drag on the time timeline, mouse will again snap, but this time to the lines in the time scale. So I start dragging at 7 and I end dragging at 8. And I'm going to tag this as personal running. And I click OK. Now there is one more trick I would like to show you and then we're done. Let's say I run for an hour, but on Wednesdays I run for only half an hour. So I need to shorten the tag. I could delete the tag and create a new one, but there is an easier solution. When I click on the tag is selected. And you can see this by the moving white lines. Now that I have selected it, I can resize it. So I click at the end and drag backwards. But to accurately tag half an hour, I am going to move my mouse to the timeline and let it snap at the half an hour marker. And that's it. In the third part of the tutorial, I'm going to explain how you can use the statistics view to see, for example, which application you use most or how much time you worked on a project.